Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Art of the Possible series. I'm Nihali Niyogi, and I'm a Principal Cloud Solution Architect at Microsoft focused on advanced networking. Today's topic is Fabric networking. Fabric, as you all know, is Microsoft's flagship and unified data analytics platform. Where networking comes at play is that data doesn't live in Fabric, right? So data lives in your databases, on-premises system. So getting Fabric connected privately and securely is going to be the main topic for today, and we will cover it with different use cases as we follow along on this video. Today, I am joined by a few of my amazing colleagues, Juan, Daniel, Alex, and Jacob from cross-functional teams with different background and expertise to share field insights and their experiences. It is my pleasure to have you all on the call. So let's start with a round of introduction. Juan, maybe you can go first.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Nehali. Hi, everyone. My name is Juan Lobet. I am a partner solution architect at Microsoft, helping our partners in the services and software sides of defense. And I help them implement Fabric and other analytics services with their customers. I'm very excited to be here today to share a bit more about what you can achieve with Fabric and the different methods we have of connecting to data and working with it inside of Fabric.
Hi, everyone. My name is Daniel Mauser. I'm the solution infrastructure engineer. I'm more like Nehali on the networking side, not much on the Fabric. I've been learning and interacting with the customers, and I hope to learn more here in this session and also contribute with my experience with networking. And yeah, and that's it. It's learning and contribute on the networking side. Thanks for having me.
Hi, my name is Alex Blaine. I'm an Azure Data Solution Engineer. So I work with customers when they're planning out their data modernization or AI flows. So we'll look at what they're trying to accomplish and decide what Azure products is going to be best to help them move forward. So very frequently, Fabric is going to be the right tool for the job. So I'm here to talk to you about Fabric. So looking forward to the conversation.
And I am Jacob Sentner. I am from a little bit of a different side of things over here. I'm a senior support engineer with our Azure AI team. I work with our strategic customers and product teams on bidirectional feedback there and solving all kinds of issues. I also build tools with Foundry, and my expertise especially is AI agents. So looking forward to tying that in when we get down the road.
Awesome. Great to have you all. Really, I think the diverse background that everyone has is great. I think we'll stitch together the full story. So over to you, Juan, for your presentation then.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Nahali. Let's move ahead. Before we start thinking about Fabric, what Fabric is, let's take a look at a conceptual standpoint of where our analytics systems are right now or used to be as we start to move into the future of data to power our AI, right? Our AI and agentic revolution. If you can see right now, we are working with multiple analytics services across disconnected data sources through isolated applications and GenAI as as a bolt-on or as a second thought, right? However, we want to move to a scenario or a situation, an approach to analytics where all analytics services are part of a unified stack. All the data is in one place, and this is what this session is really going to focus on: the data and how do we bring it to this one place. Our analytics flows through our entire state of solutions. It is not an isolated application. It feeds other experiences that benefit from these insights that we are building from our data. And finally, as you can see, also GenAI built in. I would like to think more of it as our analytics platform is built thinking of GenAI as the end point for our data, right? So how do we structure our whole analytics system knowing that we are going to be using our data to power agents? So how does Fabric play a role in taking us to this future of data analytics? As you can see, and as Nehali mentioned, Fabric is Microsoft's unified data platform for AI transformation. And you can see here that we have a variety of experiences across Fabric that give you different ways to work with your data. For now, I would like you to focus on the one lake at the bottom middle of the slide. The one lake is where all your data is going to live in Fabric. All these different experiences that you see, from ingestion with the data factory to serving the data to your customers with Power BI or with the agents as well, all this data, regardless of what service you're accessing it with, is going to be unified in Microsoft's OneLake. The OneLake is in a Delta Parquet format to optimize compression of files and make reading and writing the fastest possible. You can also see that we have Copilot included in Fabric, usable across all different experiences to really empower your developers to work faster with their data. And we also have governance and security features. As we are going to be talking today about networking, those features fall into our category of security, and you will see that there's different options to connecting to data from different sources using these experiences that we offer in Fabric. So let's really take a look at the one lake and bringing data to the one lake. That, as I mentioned, is the center of data gravity for Fabric. As you can see, there's a variety of ways to bring in data to the one lake. If you are used to Power BI, which was the predecessor for what Fabric is now and is now a part of Fabric, you probably have worked with data flows and using the hundreds of out-of-the-box data flow connectors to bring in data to Power BI. Well, those are available still, but there are other more efficient and more performant ways of bringing in data to Fabric as well. If we start with multi-cloud shortcuts at the bottom, the advantage of shortcuts is that you are not copying your data over to the one lake. You're just referencing that source of data from within your one lake. And every time you need to access it, you just go to the source. The way this data is available through the one lake to the user is no different than data that actually lives in the one lake. So say you have your data structure already built on ADLS Gen 2. You don't need to move that over to Fabric. You just need to make it available in Fabric through one of these multi-cloud shortcuts. Same if you're working with data in Google or Amazon, you're also able to have that data as a shortcut in the one lake. Mirroring allows us to bring data from a variety of other sources that do not support shortcutting into Fabric, and it does so by simplifying the way we ingest data into the one lake. With mirroring, you do not need to worry about your ETL or ELT. It is a near real-time feature that allows the databases that you decide to mirror to be present in the Fabric One Lake in an automatic way. With mirroring, you also get an advantage in terms of your licensing. You are not charged for compute used for mirroring, and you get as many free terabytes of storage in your mirroring as the size of your capacity. So for an F2 capacity, you would get 2 free terabytes of mirroring. For an F64, for example, you would get 64 terabytes free of mirroring. And open mirroring as well allows our partners to build mirroring to sources that we have not built from the Microsoft side of things, right? So as you look at this one lake environment and the different ways of bringing data into the one lake, just think of it as a growing environment and growing set of tools. The other thing I like to mention, once the data is in the one lake, you're working across a single copy of the data through all these different compute engines, as you see. If you look at Data Factory, for example, you're using Spark, data warehousing, SQL, right? So on and so forth. And the idea is that with a single copy of your data, you're able to access it with any of these different experiences without having to duplicate this data, which is a great advantage as compared to having a fragmented analytics landscape where you have to have multiple copies of your data if you are using them across different tools. Let's now look at a very simple lakehouse scenario. Lakehouses in Fabric, you should think about them, and you will see them in the demonstration as your entry point to your one lake, right? And as a way to keep your data organized. So in general, when you're bringing data into Fabric, you are going to be landing in a lakehouse. There are a couple exceptions and a couple different situations you can also use, but let's just take this as a simple concept. As you can see on the left, we see our shortcuts already and structured data coming from any other type of ingestion. You can bring them into Fabric using shortcuts for that shortcut enabled data, right? Or pipelines and data flows. And we will also show you there's a couple other ways to ingest data as well, but you could use pipelines and data flows to bring your data into a lakehouse. Once your data is in a lakehouse, it's officially within Fabric, and you will be transforming them for example, using notebooks and data flows before you're ready to use that data to generate insights. Finally, as you are done working with your data, you can use Power BI to expose it in a business intelligence manner, or a SQL endpoint to have systems querying directly to your data. I would add here as well that with the Fabric data agents, you now have a way to plug in your Fabric data directly into an agentic application or a chatbot, for example. Let's dive a bit deeper into what this ELT workflow looks like. As we've talked before, you have a variety of data sources that are compatible with Fabric. Usually the process, and we will illustrate this throughout our demo, is to bring data to a raw or bronze layer. That is bringing the data in the fastest, most performant, and cheapest way into Fabric. That is what will guide you from choosing shortcuts or mirroring or using a pipeline and a data flow, depending on the capabilities, right, of your data source. So throughout our demo, we will really be narrowing down on the different ways of connecting to these data sources before landing in the raw area. We won't explore as much the silver and the gold stages. But the idea with the silver and the gold stages is that Fabric allows you to work with your raw data and turning it into something that is ready to be consumed. That is really your gold layer. Data that is not data that you just extracted from a system, but that is data that is ready to provide you with helpful insights for your business and your users. And once you're ready in gold, again, as I was mentioning, you can serve this data in many different ways for many different use cases. Another use case supported within Fabric is the data science scenario. And as you will see at this point, we're already working off of our lakehouse, right? We can use notebooks in Fabric and experiments and models through the integrated MLflow catalog that exists in Fabric to develop and train and test our data science models within Fabric. So with the existing data we have, we are going to be building up predictive models, right? You can then store the results of your models back in a lakehouse. And what is the helpfulness of this? By integrating data science with our analytics process, we are able to score batch and live data, real-time data, as they come back to our analytical system. So we are using past data to build custom models, and then with those models, we are scoring incoming data that allows us to do even more insightful analysis of our data, right? So this integrated machine learning exists already within Fabric. We'll take a really quick look at real-time intelligence. And it is a bit of a different approach. Throughout our demos, we will be solely looking at the batch importing of data, right? But with Fabric, we're also able to connect to real-time sources. As you can see on the left-hand side of our screen, our event stream is the tool that we are going to use to connect to and orchestrate ingestion of real-time data in Fabric. Once we are processing a stream of data, we will be landing it in our event house. As we've talked about lakehouses, event houses are the equivalent, but for real-time data, right? And once we have landed our data on our event house in our KQL database, we can do various things with it. We can serve it directly through Power BI, or we can use a couple of the different items that you see here. For example, maps allow us to visualize data, Activator allow us to act directly in the data, and we also have real-time dashboards that allow us to visualize our data as it comes in without having to move over to Power BI. I will add here as well that you can also serve your data through a data agent and power an agent with real-time data, which is a very powerful feature for your agents to be available to make decisions on the latest data. As you can see, at the bottom, we have more of our typical batch processing system that we have already talked about, landing data in the one lake. The idea here is the event house also lives in the one lake, right? So your files in the event house can be made available in the one lake. This is a very useful feature as it allows you to integrate your batch and your streaming data seamlessly. This helps you build experiences that not only rely on the most up-to-date data, but they can also bring in insights from previous data you have ingested in a batch manner. Let's talk a little bit about the business model, the capacity, the licensing, right? As you can see from this diagram of Fabric that I started my presentation with, all our different experiences share a single source of compute. That is the Fabric capacity. A capacity, as I was mentioning with mirroring, right, has different SKU sizes that you can choose and resize in the Azure portal, and we will show this as well. But basically, this compute is shared across different experiences. Your data is stored in the OneLake, and that is charged separately, right, with your storage cost, depending on your amount of data per month. Diving a bit deeper here, you can see that the compute can be pay as you go, very flexible, resizing your capacities instantaneously from the Azure portal, build per second with a minimum of 1 minute every time you turn it on. Or you can also have 1-year reservations that allow you to access some exclusive discounts. And the storage is very simple, very comparable to the ADLS Gen 2 pricing model. Let's talk a little bit about networking. Nehal is going to dive deeper into these different scenarios, but I just want to give you an overview of what is available in Fabric. You can see that we have two sides of the fence. We have inbound access into Fabric and outbound access from Fabric to get to our data sources and being able to use them within Fabric, right? So inbound access really is about the users that are accessing Fabric versus outbound, which is how is Fabric getting to the data sources. When we're thinking about inbound access, Enter ID is really our center of user control, and we can use Enter ID through different ways of validating users' identity accessing into Fabric. We will also show further along another feature of inbound access. But let's focus a little bit more on outbound access. As Nehali mentioned, data sources are in many different places. And that also involves different amounts of security and networking considerations to have, which is with each data source that we have and that we are accessing from Fabric. We will be going through on-prem data gateways, VNET data gateways, trusted workspace access, and managed private endpoint throughout our conversation today. And we will highlight how each of these different tools allow you to access data sources. And here we see as well our inbound user access, which we will be exploring. You are able to disconnect Fabric from the public internet and make sure that all your users are accessing from a VNet that you have designated by integrating your Fabric workspaces with Azure Private Link. Before we move on to our demonstration, I would just like to talk about how Fabric fuels your journey to AI innovation. So it's a bit of a learning curve, as you can see here, or a growing curve that starts with the OneLake on the left-hand side of the screen, where you establish the central repository for all your data, right? This is going to be essential for you to be able to build your best models and to power your agents if you have all your data in a centralized space. Then you can use Fabric to prepare your data for innovation. And as I showed you, you can use notebooks and other Fabric experiences to clean up your data and get it ready for this gold layer. Once you have your data in your Fabric gold layer, then you can use Foundry to train custom models or to power agents, and Copilot Studio to integrate your Fabric data directly into your business user-ready agents that you are building in Copilot Studio. I will show you two customer success stories now to illustrate how Fabric is being used in the field. In this case, we can talk about Lumen, and Lumen is highlighting how they've used Fabric to save 10,000 hours, right, of work, basically of analysts building reports and building insights from their data. How have they done this? Well, really, their data was spread across dozens of different sources, and they were using custom systems to process this data and different tools. Now they are using the Fabric features such as shortcuts, mirroring, Spark notebooks to accelerate how they bring the data into Fabric and how they process it. They are also leveraging Copilot, which is present across all the different experiences in Fabric to accelerate their development of their analytics systems. This has allowed them to save 10,000 manual hours, as we mentioned, allowing them to get insights quicker, stronger lead targeting, and higher ROI. as well as saving on costly hardware and license renewals for their fragmented analytics landscape. And now taking a quick look at entity data, they are driving AI innovation with Fabric and Azure AI, right? And in this case, entity data is using Fabric data agents to ground AI in trusted role-specific data. They have different agents designated across business functions that can help users based on the queries they have. So entity data is really representing that way of approaching Fabric of let's build our analytics system with AI as the goal, as opposed to AI as an afterthought, right? So how do we empower our agents and AI systems to make the best decisions possible? And this is it for the presentation side of things. I am very excited now to hand it back to Nehali as we go through a demonstration of the different networking features in Fabric.
Thanks, Juan. Great insights and stories. So if you've been following along with me on this journey, this is usually our starting point. We start with a classic hub and spoke architecture in Azure with some sort of hybrid connectivity to on-premises. And then let's introduce, customer would bring in some of their existing PaaS services, and then let's bring in a Fabric, right? So let's take a closer look. Juan did a fantastic introduction to Fabric. I will give you a little bit more of a network perspective of Fabric. So let's take a closer look over here. And if you are using this Draw.io over here, I do have some notes so you can light up some of the optional layers if you need. So here I'm showing Fabric as a data analytics platform, and then you have OneLake, and then you have workspaces, and lake houses are within the OneLake, right? So this is how sort of the overall architecture looks like. And then within the workspaces, you have Spark clusters and notebooks. And again, there is this construct of OneLake, which Juan helped me understand it a little better, but it is one lake per tenant, and then you slice lake houses for workspace. Is that the correct introduction, Juan, or did I miss anything there?
That's exactly it, Nehali.
Perfect. Yeah. So thanks for giving me that overview. Those terminology can be confusing as I don't use it very often. And then lastly, I want to introduce this concept of a managed VNET, which is also per workspace. So this pink and yellow boxes are workspaces. Again, workspaces, like Juan mentioned, is a security and a networking boundary, and we will be diving a lot deeper into it. Okay, so these are the different constructs within Fabric. And we will be going into licensing and architecture, but if you're using these slides or this Draw.io, I do have some optional layers that you can use for licensing, different type of licensing and different type of architectures, which will take you directly, if you click on it, it will take you directly to the Azure portal, Azure documentation. So now let's look at two scenarios. Okay, so let me hide all the optional layers here. And us as a team, between all of the team members here, we thought about the best way to sort of explain the different combinations of inbound and outbound that we have. So the way we organized it is that with Fabric, now that we know the different, the different workspaces, at a high level, we organized Fabric workspaces into two types: public and private. Okay, so and then within public and private, notice that the difference is with the inbound. So when we say a public workspace, mean inbound from the internet is allowed, and when we say private workspace, inbound from the internet is not allowed. And then there is a concept of outbound with each of these workspaces, and we'll go into the different methods like public, managed VNet. Let me zoom in a little bit more here. So within each of these workspace, we have different combinations. So you can go out using public, managed VNet, VNet data gateway, and on-prem data gateway. I'll pause here. I know we spent a lot of time team organizing this one. You want to add something? Anyone want to add something here?
No, I think this is great, Nahali. To be honest, it's very representative of what we are going to be showing once we move to Fabric.
Perfect. Yeah, and likewise within private, there are, remember it is private because there is no inbound from the internet. And then even with private workspaces, you have different options for outbound. Okay. And we'll come back and revisit this, but we thought that at a high level, because of the different combinations, it will help us kind of break down these scenarios into two higher level buckets. So for part one, we will be covering this public workspace. Okay. All right. So now that we have all of that grounded, let's look at the scenario with a public workspace. So imagine these two workspaces are public. How do we access this? So let's look at some of the flows first here in Draw.io, and then we will go to the portal. So here you can see that the best way to access, and correct me with the terminology here, Juan, but we call this Fabric Service Access. Is that app.fabric.microsoft.com?
That is correct. And it used to be the Power BI online service because we had the differentiation, right, of Power BI desktop and Power BI in the service or in the web. So we can call it the Fabric service, the Fabric portal, right? Because all of the work we are doing on Fabric now is through app.fabric.microsoft.com, right? Fully on the cloud, fully in this portal in the internet.
Awesome. Thanks. So this is to access the Fabric tenant level, and then you can also access them at the workspace level. And notice that I have, this should have been, so you can, to access the space directly, the workspace directly, you can use this URL and then groups and followed by the workspace ID. We will show this to you in the portal as well. And so now that we have this in the diagram, let's go look at this in the portal. First, how to access it, and remember that it is currently in the all public scenario. Just kind of reiterate that we are on this side. So we'll be showing you everything with that. All right, so let me go to the portal here. So here I have created a shortcut. As you see, it's app.fabric.microsoft.com. So that is the easiest way to access. And maybe here, Juan, you can help us with some of the basic things that you can do, the navigation. I sometimes have a very roundabout way of navigation, so maybe you could ground us with some terminology, what you can do, and then we can create a few workspaces.
Sure thing. Perfect. So thank you, Nahali. We are now in our Fabric portal here in the service, and I would like to point your attention to the left-hand side navigation bar vertically across your screen. You will be using these different icons to move across menus in Fabric. So if you would like, let's take a look at what creating a workspace looks like. We will create a new workspace, and really the concept of a workspace is to segment how we work in Fabric. And there's many ways you can approach it, right? If you are building a shared tenant for multiple customers that you're serving, you would probably segment workspaces per customer. If you are using internally, you might do functional group workspaces. There's different ways of doing it, right? But the idea is that you work within a workspace and you build all your Fabric items within a workspace. And you can grant permissions to users within each workspace as well as within the items, right? And as we will see in a little bit, the capacities also come into play when we are working with workspaces. You can see right here that each workspace can be assigned a different license. Should we go over this quickly, Nahali?
Yes, and I think this is probably a good opportunity to create the Fabric capacity.
Perfect. All right, so if you see our first option, it says Power BI Pro, right? You can license your workspaces with individual Power BI licenses. Those are a per user license, the first two that you see, Pro or Premium per user, and it will allow you to build Power BI content, not Fabric content, only Power BI content, and share it amongst other people who share the same kind of license you have, right? So this is not really the Fabric approach, it's the Power BI approach that is still available. You can then see Power BI Embedded, that is a capacity approach similar to Fabric, but again, you are limited to only building Power BI items, and then you can share them with users who are not licensed. You can have the capacity, right? License the users who are only viewers. Then we move on to Fabric workspace types, right? You have Fabric, Fabric Trial, and Power BI Premium. Power BI Premium is a little bit different than Power BI Embedded. Some customers still have Power BI P SKUs, right? Which are being migrated progressively over to Fabric SKUs or F SKUs. But what interests us the most is the Fabric and Fabric Trial capacities. You can choose one of these two to power your workspaces. And we will be creating a Fabric capacity right now instead of using the trial, right? The trial is a great available offer. It is 60 days of free access to an F64 capacity, which is $16,000 of value across those 60 days, right? But this trial is limited in terms of offering us some of the networking features. And you can always refer to the draw.io diagram as well. We will have a more detailed list of what features are available in the trial versus which ones are not. So we will be deploying an actual Fabric capacity at this point so that we are able to test out those networking features.
All right, so let me go to Fabric capacity. I might have one already, but let's see. Maybe it's paused. Yeah, it's paused. So we'll create a new one so we can see the experience.
This is such a problem with customers too.
You need to give it a unique name. Yeah, like a storage account.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's per region, has to be all lowercase. You can't put like dots or anything, so they can't do any sort of naming schematic like whatever .dev or so. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So that's a good call out, Alex. So this has to be unique name as well.
Yeah, unique per region.
Perfect. Got it. All right. So let's look at the sizing. Maybe one of you, Alex or Juan, you want to go over this one? Alex?
Sure. So when choosing a SKU for Fabric, if you're migrating from Power BI, you might be used to the like P1, P2, P3 SKUs. So the equivalency in Fabric is the F64 has the same power as a P1 SKU. The F128 has the same power as a P2 SKU, and so on. But the F32 and below, there is no P SKU equivalent. And if you choose one of these SKUs, you do not get free Power BI viewer licenses with it. So like the P1 SKUs where you get free Power BI viewer licenses, you get that same for F64 and above. So something you should take into consideration when picking your SKU size.
Awesome. Anything else, Juan? Should we pick F2 then? Anything?
For our demo purposes, an F2 would be all right. We just need to take into account that all your Fabric services are going to share these capacity units, right? And we do have a Fabric capacity sizing tool available for your use, and we could put a link to that as well if we want, Halib. And we also have different pricing, let's call it, right, for experiences within Fabric. So there is a way to know how many capacity units are being used by your different workflows, and you can use the capacity metrics app in Fabric to track what workload in Fabric is consuming how much of your capacity, right? And that way that will help you with sizing your capacities. As you can see here, the cost is per month, but as I mentioned, it's billed per second with a minimum of 1 minute every time you turn on the capacity. So an advantage of the pay-as-you-go model, as we are doing right now, is the ability to pause your capacity when you're not using it and to resize your capacity when you need more capacity for certain higher load operations that you might be doing.
Awesome. Thank you. So we'll go ahead and select this. Yeah, so that always gets me, Juan, you brought up a good point. If we have it paused, it doesn't show up over here, the capacity, right? So let's go ahead and create it, and then we can revisit it. So we can go ahead and review and create.
Sometimes when you create a capacity, you need to refresh your Fabric portal to see it reflected in your list of available capacities.
So we will have to restart this then, right? To see
yes, we'll have
okay.
to.
Okay.
We can
No
create the. We could always create a workspace in a different capacity and then assigning the Fabric capacity. So, if you think about it, creating workspaces and capacities is completely independent, right? And you can always switch a workspace from one capacity to another. Do keep in mind though that capacities determine the region where your Fabric items live. So there are some limitations there as well in terms of availability of certain features, of being able to move certain items across different regions, and of your data residency requirements. But overall, it's very easy to switch what capacity is powering a given Fabric workspace.
Got it. Yeah. So instead of refreshing then, so yeah. All right. So it looks like our, yeah. So this one is completed. Let's look at it again. So we have two. We have this demo one. So to your point, we can go ahead and hit apply over here and come back and change the license instead of starting all over again, right?
Exactly.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and hit apply here in our, now that we have the capacity. So we are in the public workspace. I think this might be also a good time to talk about this workspace settings and how we can change the licensing and such, right?
Exactly. So we are at the workspace settings here, and I'll just point out a quick difference, Hallie. Every setting that you access through this menu will apply solely for this workspace, versus if you look at the gear icon above, that allow us to access settings shared across your Fabric tenant, right? And one of the menus that you have in that upper settings wheel is the admin portal. You do have to be a Fabric tenant admin to see most of the features that are available in the portal. And that is set from the Entra ID level, right? There are other features that can also be assigned to you as a capacity admin. So do you think it's helpful, Nehali, if I go through a very quick run through of tenant capacity workspace structure?
Yeah, this is a good segue, yeah.
Perfect. So as I was mentioning, we have a single Fabric tenant per tenant, right? Per Entra ID tenant. In our case, Nehali is an admin of our Fabric tenant. And as Nahali mentioned previously, the one lake is shared across the tenant. You have only one lake for your whole tenant. Then we have Fabric capacities. Capacities are the compute for Fabric. For any data processing or data visualization operation, you're going to be using a capacity while your data is living and being built in the one lake in the tenant. So if we look at Fabric capacities here, Nahali, in this menu, in that menu exactly, you can see we have one of them that is paused and one of them that is going on. And you manage your capacities in terms of turning them on and off and creating them and deleting them in the Azure portal. But there are a lot of Fabric capacity settings through here. So if you click on the name of the capacity, for example, Nehali, you see that you can also assign admin permissions right in the middle of the screen here to different users. So you can designate users who can change settings for that capacity. They are not tenant admins, but they can control everything that happens within all of the settings that are available within that capacity, right? And as I mentioned before, a capacity is shared across workspaces. A workspace can only be assigned to one capacity at a time, and all the compute usage that workspace uses is connected to its capacity, and then a capacity is shared amongst multiple workspaces, right? I'll plug in very briefly what domains are. You should think as domains as a feature to enable you to create a data mesh where data responsibilities are spread across multiple individuals. So you can assign a variety of workspaces to a domain and make it basically as a group, and you can choose to do so, again, as I mentioned, in different ways. You could do it in a functional standpoint, in a per customer standpoint if you're an ISV. There are also subdomains which allow you to spread out the domain even further into smaller groups. But what you have to keep in mind is that a workspace could be part of a domain, right? And powered by a capacity. And then another workspace part of the same domain could be powered by a different capacity, right? And a capacity can also power workspaces across domains. So it's a bit of a segmentation in between. Capacities are your compute and domains are your classification of data items, if that makes sense.
Yeah, a whole different dimension that we can
Exactly.
probably include in the future videos as well, maybe. Awesome. Anything else here? There are some settings that we will be looking at under advanced setting as we progress through the video, where we have a lot more networking settings over there as well. So we'll look at all of these later, right? Anything else in the admin portal?
I think these are the features of most interest to us. Well, like you're showing here, right? The networking settings are also helpful.
Okay, so that we are in the admin portal, we can just go to the workspace like this, right? And then we were here. So kind of coming back from admin portal, we are now at the workspace level settings. So should we change our licensing here right now?
Exactly. We can go ahead and assign to this workspace that we created the Fabric capacity that we launched from the Azure portal.
And before it was grayed out. So now we can see the one that has that is active, and then select. Okay. Anything else, or are we good to go here? There are some networking settings that we will be looking at in a little bit later, but for now, as you can see, the inbound networking is the one that is the one where we are allowing it from all public connections.
Perfect.
Awesome. All right. So we got the workspace created, and let's just quickly access the workspace directly. This came up on one of the calls we were working with one of our partners. So if you need to access this workspace directly, So now I have saved the direct link to the workspace ID followed by groups and the ID, as you can see over here. So let's save this and then let's try to hit the workspace directly. Awesome. So that's working. So kind of jumping back to the draw IO, what we just showed you was accessing this directly and then accessing a workspace using the workspace ID. Okay, groups followed by the workspace ID. So Juan, before we go to Outbound, let's talk about this licensing comparison. Of course, Copilot generated this for me. But you want to call out the important distinctions between trial capacity and the paid capacity here?
Sure thing. As you can see here, what is most interest to us is private link and trusted workspace access. At the bottom of the trial capacity, you will see that these two features are disabled, and that is why we are needing to use a paid capacity. So if you are in the exploration phase of Fabric right now, and just want to test out how Fabric works in a simple manner, you can use a trial capacity. But once you move over to design and validate your network structure, you will need to upgrade to a paid capacity. As we showed you, it's very easy to swap the capacity that is powering a given workspace. So you would just launch a capacity and switch it for the trial one in your existing workspace, and then you can start building your network. A couple other features disabled here, Copilot and AI experiences. These two features are supported in any capacity in the paid SKUs. And you also have, as Alex mentioned, he had a great point. If you have an F64 plus capacity, you are able to share reports with any users. Any users that are not licensed for Power BI Pro can still view Power BI reports living in that capacity that is F64 plus, right? So any workspace assigned to an F64 plus capacity, the reports living there can be shared with users who are unlicensed in Power BI. Keep in mind, though, that for anyone creating a Power BI report, you will need a Power BI Pro license as a report creator. So we can create, any users with the capacity can create Fabric items except Power BI reports, which still need you to be licensed individually with a Power BI Pro license.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, that was one of the first things that I got stuck on when I was learning Fabric licensing. So that's a good call out. Thank you. All right, so now we are ready to jump into the fun part, I would call it the outbound. Again, we are still in the public workspace, but let's look at the out. So I'll hide this flows. So let's look at the outbound. So with Outbound, Juan has done a fantastic job to help me create some 4 use cases, which we would lab and show you in the demo as well. So the first use case is what we call the batch import. Now, I always find, and maybe Daniel, you would agree with me on this one, that when I look at a flow, I always look at it from a network perspective. So even though the data movement in this SQL batch use case is inbound, I think of it as outbound because essentially you are initiating the connection from Fabric going to SQL. So for me, this is an outbound connection, but the data movement is inbound. Any comments, any thoughts? Just want to ground that direction of the flow.
Yeah, that's correct. We need to think about Fabric as a initiator, right? As a client initiating, but you completely right in terms of networking flow, that the data it's coming in. So it's kind of confusing, but that the way it is, right? So we need to think about Fabric always as initiator.
Yeah. Anything else you want to talk about a little bit about this use case, and then we'll go in the portal and do a quick lab or a demo.
So for this use case, basically our first use case, we are going to be following that batch process of bringing in data from a SQL database into Fabric. So we are going to be showcasing how you can query that database and then land that data on the Fabric OneLake. Because our data is living in an Azure SQL database, we can use mirroring, right? But in our first use case, we're going to be illustrating how you would bring in data in a more traditional way, a more manual way, through a notebook in our case.
Perfect. And if you're using this draw.io, every use case I have written a little blurb about it. Of course, it was AI generated, but most of it aligns with what we are doing. So the data is sitting over here in the Azure SQL database. And notice that anytime you see this red public internet, that means the outbound connectivity is going over public. Okay, so right now, if I kind of jump here, we're showing this public flow. So sitting in a public workspace going to public. Okay. All right, and so let me jump back into the portal. First, what I'll do is I'll show you how we have set up. We already have an existing PaaS, like customer would have an existing PaaS service. I'll show you all of the settings here, and then we will go into Workspace, and Juan will help us creating this use case. So going back over here, my SQL Server. Right now, if I go to SQL Server Overview, it has two databases. They're both online. We will be working with this database. If you look at the networking setting, public access is selected networks, but more importantly, it is allowing Azure services and resources to access this server. Right now, I do have a private access enabled, but disregard this. This is actually projecting it in the customer's VNET. So in other words, if you want that there is a private endpoint that exists in the customer VNET, but it's not at play. And then there's nothing here, no changes in this connectivity tab. Anything else? I am using Entra ID, so that's how it is set up. Anything you want to call out here, Juan, for the SQL server side?
No, I think that's a great overview, Nehali. I think this sets us up perfectly to try to connect to the SQL Server from Fabric now.
Perfect. And I have a database tab here for this. There's only one database, and if we run the query, just so you know what's in the database is very, very simple. There's just this is what exists in this table called sales private. Okay, so with that, let's go to Fabric Workspace, and then we will do the batch SQL import use case. So I'll let you help me navigate this one here.
Perfect. As we've talked about, Nehali, the place for us to access the OneLake is a lakehouse. So whenever we're working in Fabric, when I create a new workspace, usually the first thing I do is I spin up a new lakehouse. So what do you think if we go ahead and do this now?
Sure. So
Perfect.
we do a new item, lakehouse. I'll call this public. Oh, I don't know. It doesn't like this. I'll call this public because I'm sure we will have more for private as well. Okay, so create.
Right, so welcome to our lakehouse. We can see that currently the lakehouse is empty. I'll just point out something very quick, Nehali. If you look at the left-hand side navigation menu, you will see that we have two different folders. We have tables and we have files. When we think about an ELT process, right, extract, load, transform, our goal is to load files as quickly to Fabric as we can, right, in the most performant manner. And once they are in Fabric, we will process them into Delta Parquet tables. When we work with data across Fabric items, we want to work with tables instead of files, right? So we want to create these tables when we land the data into Fabric. And then after the tables are ready, we can start working with that data across all our Fabric experiences. So I'll just point that out very quickly.
Awesome.
Shall we go ahead and create a notebook now, Nehali, so we
Sure.
can connect to this SQL database?
Yeah.
So in our case, for example, we already built a notebook to get ready for this demonstration. So we'll go ahead and use the import button instead of the new item button, which will allow us to bring the notebook instead.
I see. So the notebook, if we do it from scratch, we will do it here. But because we had saved some content in there, we will use import. Okay, I thought we were only importing the Python constructs that we had written in it. I see. So we could do import. Good idea.
So the notebooks are IPYNB format, right? So interactive Markdown notebooks that combine Markdown and code cells. So whenever we craft a notebook in Fabric, we are going to be able to download it in that IPYNB format, and then we can reuse it in Fabric, or we can also share it across different systems that accept the same, basically industry standard format for notebooks, I would say.
I see. So this is the IPYNB format.
Exactly.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, this is just so that we, and then the notebook shows up over here, and then we click. Is there a good way to clear one click all the output, Juan? I usually do a roundabout way, and I do this. Is there a smarter way to do that?
If you go on the edit button at the top of your tool ribbon inside of this notebook view, you should be able to access a clear all outputs button.
Ah, nice. Okay, cool.
Exactly.
Okay. So one of the things that I do, and this is just to kind of bring the network eyes here, is, I just want to validate that we are indeed using the public IP of the server, of the SQL database server. So I have this NSLOOKUP command, and this runs inside a cluster, right? So we would need a Spark cluster at this point. Is that true?
So if you look at the bottom left of your screen, or if you go back to the home menu, you will see how Fabric tells us it is starting a Spark pool, basically.
Oh, this one, yeah.
Yes, and also if you go to the notebook, on the upper ribbon, it says home next to edit. That allows you to see what session you are connected to in that dropdown where it says connecting. So if you have worked with Spark before, you have to connect your notebooks, right, to different compute clusters that you can configure in different sizes. So while our Fabric capacity is managing the compute of this notebook, right, and it is billing our usage by consuming those capacity units, we still need that Spark cluster to be running for our use of notebooks. The equivalence here is that every capacity unit, right? So an F2 has 2 capacity units, allows you to launch as many as 2 Spark vCores. We can also enable another feature, which is called Spark Autoscale Compute Billing, which basically separates our Spark usage from our other capacity operations. So we would see that as a different line item in Azure, and it would be charged just per usage of this specific Spark cluster, as opposed to consuming our overall capacity.
Got it. Yeah, so kind of coming back to the visualization, this is the notebook and this is the Spark cluster. So Outbound is from the perspective of these Spark cluster, right?
Exactly. In our case of the use of the notebook, because all our other experiences don't need Spark clusters.
Right. So if we didn't, while we wait for the cluster to spin up, if we didn't import the notebook the way we did it, you could manually add code items. So if you're not familiar, if you come from a different networking background, if you're not familiar, you could add the code and you could insert code elements over here. But since we had already done this, we're going to set this up here. It
Oh, there
took
we go.
3 minutes. Yeah. All right. So as you saw, it took just about 3 minutes to start the session. So we paused the video and now we have the session running. Now, one of the first use case that I realized with Notebook was that I can quickly run some simple networking commands to get the lay of the land and see where it is egressing from or where it is, what the NS lookup looks like. And if you notice, it is resolving to a public IP. And later in the video, we will show that it indeed resolves to private endpoints or private IP when we get there. I also like to run some things to see that I'm indeed going out from the cluster. This IP doesn't really matter at this point. And then this also gives you the Spark version and some few basic Spark commands. We'll share this notebook, most parts of this notebook with you. Juan, you want to talk a little bit about now? I think we're ready for our use case here. So we will do this particular demo from the SQL to the Lakehouse.
Perfect. So as you see here, Nahali, you have set up a JDBC connection for importing, and this is a performant connection for high volumes of data. In our case, we're only bringing 3 rows, but you could expand this as you scale out. That's one of the biggest things to understand when you're working with Fabric. Anything that we demo can be scaled out to larger amounts of enterprise data. So in this case, it is going to be obtaining our own Entra token to log into this database using Entra identity verification, right? And you can see we've loaded the 3 rows of the data into the notebook. So think of it right now as this data living in your Fabric notebook. It is not in the Lakehouse, or it is not in your OneLake yet. So what we can do, Nehali, is on the left-hand side of your screen, you can attach a Lakehouse to this notebook. So the notebooks are connected to Lakehouses, so they're able to read and write from the Lakehouses, right? So we already created a Lakehouse, so we can select from the OneLake catalog, and that will open an item for us, a window for us to look into items that we are already working with. So you'll see you have the Lakehouse at the top, and the bottom one, it's the SQL endpoint of the Lakehouse. So for now, let's use the Lakehouse. The SQL endpoint is helpful to serve that data once we load it.
How do I know the difference? They both look the same to me.
It doesn't say what it is right there, but if you look at the icon, there's a very small difference. It's a blue house with 2 waves as opposed to a house with no waves and a lot of dots inside.
Got you. Okay, I didn't even see that. Got you. Yeah.
Small differences.
Good call. All right. So need to stop your current notebook session.
We can go ahead and do that. It should hopefully start quicker when we start a new session, because we should have that pool still running.
So should I start a new session now then?
Yes.
And then we wait again. All right. So we did have to pause the video for the session to start again. And while we were waiting, we cleaned up this notebook, this cell a little bit. Originally, it was also writing it to Lakehouse, but we'll break down that step. So let's go ahead and run this again. And then should we add additional code here for writing into Lakehouse?
That sounds great. We can ask Copilot to write the currently existing DF to the Lakehouse, and we can specify what we would like our table to be named, and Copilot would include that in the generation of code. We can ask Copilot to write DF to the Lakehouse into a table named however you would like to name it.
Okay. Okay, that looks good. So we'll share all of these notebooks with you in the GitHub repo. Of course, we'll touch up some of the code that we deleted that you saw in the previous section of the recording.
Perfect. And now that we have written to the Lakehouse, if we refresh our DBO menu on the left-hand side of the screen, we should see that table popping up now. And there you go. That's our table right there.
Awesome. Is there a way to view this table in the data format, or?
We can always ask Copilot also to show us a preview of the table.
I see. So here.
Exactly.
Show preview of the table in Lakehouse, like that.
And we can specify which table, in the case especially we had multiple tables. We can just ask it for the name of the table.
Nice.
Perfect.
Awesome. Right. So coming back to the drawing board, we just showcased that data from using the notebook, we were able to bring data from the SQL into the Lakehouse. So that's our use case number one. Juan, do you want to talk a little bit about our observation on why, when we were spinning up the compute, it was taking a little bit longer. And when we looked at the workspace, we found something interesting we can share with our audience here, is that in the workspace settings under, where was it? Was it data engine?
Exactly, in the Spark settings.
Yep. It was not using the starter pool because of this. I had the private links already enabled at the tenant level. So should we go back and change it so that our future demos are faster?
Yes, we found this limitation that having private links turned on, it disables our starter pools. Basically, our starter pools are Spark Complete clusters that are always ready to go with a short notice, but we don't get charged for them until we are using them. So they're a good feature of Fabric that really turns down the time that you need to start up a session to use a notebook.
Perfect. Of course, when we get to the private scenarios, we will have to enable it, but for the first set of use cases, maybe we'll just disable it. So for that, you would go to the admin portal. Again, this is that gear icon at the top. And admin portal, and then we go to advanced. Yeah, I had this enabled. It's not configured, but it's just enabled, so I should disable that. And sometimes I've seen that it does take a little while. Right, Daniel, we had observed that this setting, when we change, it takes a little while to take effect.
That's correct. Usually 15 minutes to 20 minutes to take effect.
Yes, and then I found this trick which I'm not sure we can test it out when we do private endpoint, private link service and private endpoints. But there is a way if you go into your subscription resource provider and re-register Fabric, sometimes it does take immediate effect. Okay, so coming back to the drawing board, we just finished the SQL batch import. So going to the next use case one, let's go into the SQL mirroring. From a diagram perspective, it looks very similar, but let's go take a look at it. Maybe you can talk a little bit about that use case and what it does, and then we'll go in the portal.
Perfect. So as I was mentioning in my initial slides, mirroring allows us to basically offload this ELT process from our own responsibility to an automated process. It basically uses the SQL database change data capture feed to update the database replica in Fabric in a near real time approach. So we are going to be seeing that data up to date in Fabric when we need to use it.
Perfect. So should we go to the portal?
Let's do it.
Okay, and before we go there, just one thing I forgot to mention is that every use case, I do have a little blurb about it in the Draw.io as well. Okay. All right, so here we are in Fabric, and we'll go to Workspaces, Public Workspace, and then New Item. All right, and what do we pick this one, right? Mirror to
That
Azure
is
SQL.
correct.
Okay.
And as Nahali sets up our mirror database, I will mention that in terms of networking, using these two different scenarios will allow us to demonstrate once we turn off the public access to our databases that there are two different tools that we would need to use to access the database behind a firewall, depending on whether we are mirroring or whether we are accessing it with a notebook.
Okay, so here we have a few connection option. Notice the data gateway. We are not going to be using it right now. We are using the public and an SQL DB. And we'll do a new connection, and I am using the organizational account that I showed you earlier in the SQL server. And of course, I got this server FQDN from properties and server FQDN. Okay. All right. Anything else here? We do a new connection, right?
That sounds great. Let's get it going.
So one thing I want to call out while we wait for this to come up and kind of jumping back to the drawing board is I have shown one of the limitations for mirrored databases, not so relevant right now with the public workspace, but it will go in the paused state if you're using private workspaces. Okay, so that's something that we had found out. So if you click on it, it takes you to the document that talks about the support. Anything you want to add here?
The one thing I'll say here as well, Nahali, is that all these features are changing. And as we were discussing with Alex previously, you can expect Fabric to evolve as time goes by. So we do not have a date right now for this availability, but it might be something that gets turned on in the future.
Perfect. Yeah. So I just wanted to share that, and it is linked directly from the diagram as well. So let's see if our thing is connected now. So now we just hit connect over here. Do we need to select anything?
Here we can just select the tables of interest, right? When we are mirroring a database, we don't always need to mirror everything, right? So in our case, we only have one table, but
I see. And then destination, we can name it differently or exactly how it's named in the source. The biggest difference is that this one is not in the lake house, but this one, where is this? When we have the SQL mirroring use case, where is the destination?
A
How would I?
SQL Mirror database becomes its own item within Fabric,
I
but you can
see.
also access it throughout the other Fabric experiences. So it becomes one of your sources available in your One Lake hub. It just won't show up as a lakehouse, but rather as a mirror database.
Okay, so let's go back and see. And what's the best way to look at the tables? Oh no, it's just saying its replication status is running, source and destination. Now this is the source and this. And if we want to see the tables, is there a way to see it? So we paused the video over here. For some reason, it took longer. We tried to refresh this and it wasn't showing up, but now it is. And then there are a couple of refresh buttons that I would like to call out. One is over here, one is here. Of course, you can also do the browser refresh, but it did take a few minutes. Is there anything you want to call out, Juan, for this analytics endpoint and what it's used for and how we can test?
So basically, the SQL Analytics endpoint that we have seen show up in our lakehouse as well allows us to write these SQL queries against the data that we have stored in our lakehouse, or in this case, in our mirror database. So it's basically the entry point that we would use for querying this database. If you are using a notebook, you're going to be reading directly from the lakehouse, right? But in many other cases, you're just connecting to the endpoint and sending SQL queries.
Got it. Yeah, so before we were also checking to make sure that the schemas were updated over here, right?
Exactly. You should see it reflected here, basically, same schema.
Yeah, and one tip for navigation, which I always forget, and Juan has shown me this a couple times, is at the top navigation bar, you could click here and go back to where you were. All right, so far what we have done is we did the batch import use case, then we did the SQL mirroring, and during the break, Juan helped me get a few crisp icons, so if they look slightly different. So thank you, Juan, for those. So now we are going to go in the copy activity use case. Juan, do you want to talk about how we have set up our lab and how the real world scenario looks like?
For sure. Thank you, Nehali. When we are looking at this scenario, we are trying to bring in a text file from a system that is publicly accessible through the internet, right? So this could be a variety of situations. Think, for example, something that is hosted in your SharePoint, right? And you're accessing it with your organizational account. In this case, we are putting this file on ADLS Gen 2 to simplify our representation of this situation of how you would use a copy activity, right? Even though after this use case, we're going to show you how to use shortcuts to ADLS Gen 2, which is the preferred approach to something in this situation. So this use case, we would like to highlight the copy activity itself, not that the file is in ADLS Gen 2. When we move into the private outbound use cases, we will show you how to get this file from a standalone Linux server. So that will be more representative of a real world use case. And at that point, we will need to use an on-premise data gateway with this copy activity. So I would just like to focus on the copy activity for this one scenario, as opposed to the file being in ADLS.
Perfect, makes sense. So ready to jump on the portal and we can create the item then?
Perfect, let's do it.
Okay, so let's take a quick look at the ADLS storage container that we have already set up. And under files, we have this customers.csv file, very simple file. Okay, all right, so let's go to Fabric. And workspaces, yeah. So we are already in the public workspace. And just for the purpose of the recording, we have public access enabled from all networks, right? So this is our public scenario and endpoint. And we'll grab the DFS endpoint, correct?
Exactly.
Okay, so let's start our copy job right here. So new item and copy job. So we'll call this demo copy job AD public. And for the data source, we can search Azure over here. View more. It's this one, right?
Exactly.
And then we paste the DFS FQDN that we got, new connection, no data gateway for this use case. And then we will use, what do we want to use? Account key or,
Exactly.
okay. And let's grab the account key for this one. Yeah. Okay. All right. And the privacy level is good. None over here.
I would use organizational just in case.
Okay.
And let's see our connection here.
Would we see anything under Fabric or should I hit next here?
Yes, we can expand under Fabric and we'll reach our file itself.
Okay, looking good.
And that is the file that we want to bring in.
Okay, awesome.
In this case, let's do schema agnostic binary copy. And I will briefly mention why we are doing this. This would be a representation of an ELT process where we are extracting the file, right, from the system, loading into Fabric, into a bronze layer, just the file itself, not a table. And then we are transforming it on Fabric with another process. The difference between ELT and ETL, right, extract, transform, load, is that if we're doing ETL, we would be transforming this file into a table from this same copy activity. We are able to do so if we want to simplify and have one less step, but it's usually more performant to just bring in files to Fabric, and once we land them on Fabric, then we process them through another step, another transformation step. And that's the reason why we could use a pipeline, right, for this copy activity. We could put it within a pipeline to trigger another step once this copy activity has finished running.
Got it. So good insights there. So should I hit next here?
Perfect.
Choose the
Oh, you will
folders.
have to click left click on customers. Sorry, click to the left of customers.csv, that checkbox. There you go. And now we will just be landing this on our lakehouse. I think it's available at the very bottom of our screen. The one we already created, we can just keep landing here. And in this case, we'll be using a full copy. We could also incrementally copy if we are doing this in a certain repetitive scheme over time. And as you can see below, we are not able to land our data into tables. We can only land it into files right now because we chose that schema agnostic copy, right? If we had defined a schema, we could write to tables instead of to files. The difference to understand between files and tables in Fabric is how our tables are Delta Parquet tables that can be accessed across all the different Fabric experiences, right? So our goal is always to bring data into the tables. The only thing to decide on is what step are we turning files into tables? Is it at the beginning or is it further along as we are representing right now?
Got it. So we'll select files and then next, and then here do we need to browse and choose a destination?
And we can just choose the root folder. That's okay.
Okay.
Perfect. And in this case, it doesn't really matter to us whether to flatten or preserve because it's a single file, but we can also choose that.
It doesn't look like it's a required field, so we'll hit next. Okay, so it's getting from here to here. And this is the connection name, save and run, ready to run.
Let's do it.
Okay.
And this will take some time to run as it brings all the data. We can also, if you want to refresh, oh, it's auto refreshing, perfect. It should give us a real-time status on what is going on here. And now that it says queued, you can click on Fabric that is showing up on green, right, on source destination.
Mhm.
And this should open up another screen that tells you down to the detail of what it's reading. Right now, it finished because it was a single file. But you can see read one file, 566 bytes, and it just wrote it to the lakehouse. So if you were loading terabytes of data, you would use this menu to track your progress.
Nice. And how do we validate in the lakehouse?
We can go back to our workspace.
Okay, so let me do that in
open our
another.
lakehouse.
Okay. So.
And now we'll have to look at the files menu instead of at the tables menu.
So before we got it in the.
Exactly. And it won't show up in the preview. You'll have to click on the files folder. And there you will see the file right there.
Nice. Nice. And while we are here, I also want to show from a network perspective that if you go under the skier icon and manage connections and gateways, we will see that new connection that we created here as well. Right. A lot of the connections will show up over here.
Perfect.
Anything else? Any other observations anyone wants to make before we go to our next use case? All right, so we're ready for our next use case. So jumping back to the drawing board, we just did this copy activity, and then we want to showcase the ADLS shortcut, right?
Exactly. Now, this ADLS shortcut would always be your preferred option when bringing data from ADLS, right? So what the shortcuts enable us to do, as I briefly mentioned in my presentation, is to reference data in another file system without actually bringing it over to Fabric. So you wouldn't be paying twice for the storage of that file, right? You would only be billed for the storage in the source itself in ADLS. So in this case, we can go through the steps of how to create this shortcut to the file we already have.
Perfect. Yeah, and that's why I was trying to show the direction of the flow, that here we are actually bringing the data to the lakehouse, and here we're just sort of pointing it to that space. Is that accurate?
That is exactly.
And Alex, I know you have seen this in the field. I know you work with a lot of teams. What's your observation on this use case? Is this getting popular? how is it getting used?
Yeah, a lot of customers, they want to protect their data sources that they're bringing into Fabric. So, for example, having private storage accounts, private links to everything. And in Fabric, we have ways to accommodate that in most of our flows, like with our VNET gateways, on-premise gateways, managed private endpoints. But then when it comes to shortcuts, we don't have a way to specify additional connection details in a shortcut. So when we get to this point, we have to use this trusted workspace access, which allows us to just pass an authentication token with the request to the shortcut, and then that actually lets us through the firewall. So it allows us to connect via shortcut to an ADLS account while still keeping it protected from the public internet. So this is what I see a lot of customers doing when they still want the flexibility of shortcuts, but they want the privacy of locking down their storage accounts.
Thanks, Alex. Yeah, great insights. So let's test it out then. All right, so here we are.
Let's start our lakehouse, Nahali. And from the same files menu that we see, we can click on the three dots to the right of files at the highest level. Not here, but one level higher on our root folder, and we can create a new shortcut here.
Okay, here.
Exactly. And we can use ADLS Gen 2. We could use our existing connection if it's saved. Is that the one with the account key? I believe so.
Yeah, that's the new one.
Okay. And it's a little bit of a similar browsing menu, right?
Yes.
And here when you shortcut, you don't shortcut to a file, right? You always shortcut to a folder. So if you click on the square next to files, we should be able to shortcut here.
And if we had multiple files, you could selectively do it.
You would shortcut at a folder level.
I see.
And there are some transformations that we can do here, but in this case, we'll just skip this. And we can go ahead and create a shortcut.
That was easy.
Right?
Yes.
Shortcutting is one of the most straightforward ways to bring your data. And as you can see, you now have two files folder, the one that we brought with the copy activity and then files one. And if you look at files one, it's kind of hard to notice, but you see a little bit of a link on the bottom right of that folder, right? That shows that it's a shortcut.
Nice. I like this icon, the little link icon. Yep.
Right there. And now if you click on files one, Nahali, you should be able to see the same customers.csv, right?
Very nice. Yes.
Perfect.
Awesome. That was a fun demo.
Definitely.
I will also take this opportunity to put the little icon here, which I copied. Let's see how it comes out. That shows the little link icon over there. Okay. So I think that ends all the use cases that we wanted to show with public settings. So in other words, kind of jumping back to our big picture, we did the outbound with all public, and we're ready to go to managed VNET unless there's anything else.
I think we're ready to go to our first private scenario.
Yes, so far so good. It was all public. So now let's turn it up a notch. All right, so with managed VNET, as we showed at the beginning, managed VNET is per workspace, and then you can, is my font coming out okay? The size of the diagrams and everything, you guys can see okay? Okay. So managed VNET is per workspace, and then you can project the private endpoint for the For example, the Azure SQL over here, and you can also do it in another workspace if you need it to. But for now, we'll hide this one, and then we will be ready for our first use case, except we will be doing this using a private endpoint. So in other words, we'll run the same notebook, and we will then use it with the private endpoint. So first we will have to create this private endpoint in the managed VNet, and then we'll run the notebook. All right, so let's go ahead and create the managed private endpoint. So to do that, we have to go to let's start at the workspace. Then we go to this, and then outbound networking. And then we create the managed private endpoint over here. I just want to show you the before picture just so everyone has it. So on this SQL Server, if we go to the networking tab and private access, right now I already have one private endpoint, but that's projected in the customer's VNet. So not to confuse this with, so this private endpoint is projected in this VNet, which we will use later. But for now, we will project this private endpoint. So here, coming back to the fabric, let's go ahead and create, we'll call it SQL Server Managed VNet Private Endpoint, and then let's grab the resource identifier. So that comes under the SQL Server and the resource ID, so we'll grab that. Put the resource identifier here. And it automatically picks up the target sub-resource, and we will say request from fabric. And notice this request will show up on the other side. So we'll say create. And it says provisioning over here. And if we jump back to on this side, networking, private access, refresh, we got the request from fabric, and then we can hit approve over here. So we can say approved SQL. So it's here, this is important step, often missed. So pending, and then if we come here on the fabric side, we should see it succeeded. Anything else, Daniel? I know you've played a lot with this one. Anything you want to call out here? Anything I missed?
No, all good. You did a great job.
Thank you. I think this one is rather simple. It will get to the next level when we do it with the PLS and the inbound, right? This is outbound. So I think this does take a while, but I do see it as succeeded. Okay, so it's approved. So I think we're ready to do our use case, which was to do a notebook and do the exact same thing, right, that we did with the public use case. Batch import from notebook, from using the notebook, right?
Exactly.
So one of the things that I corrected in the diagram, so in case anyone notices it differently, is, Juan helped me with this, but anytime you run a notebook, you need a Spark cluster. So I had the Spark cluster as the default before, but now I'm only putting it when I'm running the notebook. Is it more accurate, Juan?
Yes, the Spark cluster is what is allowing your notebook to run, right? It lives within your capacity. So you are going to be connecting from the Spark cluster to Azure SQL, then landing that data into your notebook's memory, and then writing that from your notebook's memory onto the Lakehouse.
Perfect. Yeah, so let's go to our notebook. So we'll connect to our SQL Server notebook that we had from before. And you showed me how to clear all the output. But before I move away and clear the output, notice the NS lookup that we did before of the SQL Server was resolving to a public IP. So let's keep that in mind, and let's see what happens when we run it now. So let's go ahead, and this is the first test that I want to run to make sure that we are indeed connecting to the SQL Server that is in the managed VNET. Oh, this is starting the session. Hopefully this time it should start quickly.
Yeah,
So it's taking some time to do that. Juan, when I did it this morning to prep for the session, it started pretty quickly. Do you think it's because, should we check our pool again?
yes, always good to go to our workspace settings and check our starter pool and see what is going on over here. And we see this new message that we were seeing before, right?
Mm-hmm. So before it was saying we had private link service enabled, but this is because we just enabled a private endpoint. It's taking a long time to start. 2 to 3 minutes will take 2 to 3 minutes instead of 5 seconds. Ah, interesting. So for this demo, we will have to wait. We can pause the video here. Okay. All right, so there we have our pool now running. It says standard session over here, so let's start. All right, it took some time, but the observation here is that it's indeed a private IP. And this, I do have an IP adder command before to just show this IP itself of the Spark cluster that we are on. And then I think we can run this notebook unless there is any other observation to make here.
Yes, I think we can go ahead and get this data from our SQL server on Azure.
Should we put this to a different, to distinguish between the table? So we can call it sales private using PE, something like that.
Perfect.
So that the table stays different.
Great.
Yeah.
If not, we would be effectively overwriting our table, right? Because we have that df.write.mode overwrite.
Yep. Okay. Awesome.
Perfect. And you can see your new table loading here.
Perfect. And this table will also be in the Lakehouse.
You'll just need a quick refresh of your Lakehouse, but it will show up there. There
Very
you go.
nice. Yeah. Another thing, I know, Daniel, you had made this observation, but you were seeing this, and again, this is just strictly from a networking perspective, you were seeing this 10004 IP in some of the logs as well, right? Was it in the database logs, or where was it getting seen? It would be interesting if we can either show that or talk about that a little bit. Where were you seeing those, in the database logs or?
Yeah, I haven't checked the database logs. In my case, I enable NSP, Network Secure Perimeter. And Network Secure Perimeter, as you may know, is our next generation of protecting pass solutions. And when you enable NSP on top of on the SQL side, and you enable the logging, and you're going to see that 10004 call through NSP.
I see. And where is the NSP setting?
So usually when you go to public access, go back, I believe you should, in your case, I believe because you don't have, I think if you pick selected networks, you may have an option for NSP, or because you don't have NSP profile created, is not going to show up. So you need to create an NSP profile and associate to that SQL server.
Got it. I think, yeah, we'll do this in our part 2. I think we'll add this use case because I think it's a very industry especially for enterprises, I think. So we'll do a special chapter for that one. I'll add it to our agenda.
I agree.
Perfect. Yeah, thanks for calling that out. Yeah, I know that first time when you looked at this, we were able to stitch it all together as to where this IP was coming from.
Correct.
This 10004. Okay. Perfect. So now we have the managed VNet working. And I will call out one thing here, that with managed VNet and private endpoint, there is a list of, I have a link to the official Azure documentation, but a couple of things are not supported when you have private endpoints and managed VNet.
One thing I'll point out here is that every Fabric item, right, that brings in data to Fabric needs a different tool for connecting to private sources. So throughout our 4 demos, we will see what tool corresponds with each item, right?
That's right. The moment we disable public access to this and just have private endpoint, mirroring will break, right?
Exactly.
The mirroring is not the use case for this managed VNet, correct?
Exactly. This managed VNet is for use within notebooks.
Right. Perfect. So we expect our mirroring to break, but right now it's still showing. Let's go double check, but it is still showing as. So we'll come back and check on this one. Okay. So we'll revisit this. We'll keep going with our use cases. So now we are ready to go to our VNet gateway.
Yes, and I think the VNet gateway will be using it for the mirroring itself.
Yes. So coming back to the big picture, we just finished these two, public and managed VNet, and then now we're going to our VNet data gateway. Okay, so lots of combinations, so just want to make sure we revisit that. So let's do a little bit of the envisioning for the VNet data gateway and how it's designed to work. So VNet data gateway under the hood is leveraging the Power Platform VNet service, and then we need it spins up a little container in a subnet. We have to carve up a subnet ahead of time, and then once we have that, it will the way the flows would work, we will be able to hit anything in Azure using in that particular Azure VNet using this flow, the orange flow that is shown over here. And you can, I have used a Gen 2 workflow to do a quick testing, but you could also do, project these source and sync for an ADF, Azure Data Factory use case, and use this Power Platform, or you could do the SQL mirroring, which is what we will show you. So first you project this private endpoint into an Azure private endpoint subnet, and then you can do the mirroring through this. There are some requirements, right, Daniel, for this Fabric subnet that you had also run into that one before?
That's correct, Nahali. You need to create a delegated subnet,
That's right.
which means you need to add, during the process of creation that subnet inside the VNet, you need to define the proper Power Platform resource type there in order to make it visible through the Fabric portal, because the process of creation of the VNet data gateway is in the it's over the Fabric portal, but you can only pick that subnet if it's properly delegated.
That's right. Yes, a good call out. And I think with that, we are ready to go and showcase this whole use case, but we'll start with first showing this delegated subnet like Daniel mentioned, then we'll create the VNet gateway, VNet data gateway. I already have the private endpoint projected over here, so we should be good to go for the mirroring after. All right, so let's jump back on the portal. That to deploy the VNet gateway, you have to prep the a subnet. So I have a VNet here, and if I go to the subnet, that's where, let me see if I can show the delegation. Yeah, so this is the Power Platform subnet that I have created, where we will deploy the VNet gateway, and it has to be delegated like this, where you can delegate it right over here. So this is a requirement, and I believe there are a couple other requirements where you have to have the right resource providers as well. And we'll link all of these Azure documentation. So you do need this Power Platform resource provider registered as well, okay, for the VNet gateway to work. So those are the two requirements. So let's go ahead and provision the VNet data gateway. Juan, that's the step that we have to do next, right? Just keep me honest here in terms of the order in which we do this. Okay, so here
We'll go
VNet.
to our Fabric settings. I think they are hidden because you have too many things open at the very top. So maybe we can close some of those and we'll see how settings will come back. So all the items in purple at the very top of the screen, those are what we have been working on, right? And that is almost like narrowing our menu. So we're able to just close some of those and we'll see these settings will come back.
I was like, where did that disappear? Okay, good. All right, so here you go to settings and manage connection and gateways. So this is where a lot of the networking stuff gets configured. As we saw, we had looked at the connections tab. So let's go look, there's nothing in on-premises, and then let's go and create a brand new gateway. So we'll do a create network gateway. We'll pick the subscription. We'll select the resource group. I believe here you have to select the resource group where the VNet is. Is that correct? Management RG.
I think so.
Yeah, so this is the management RG. And then we select the VNet, and then only the Power Platform subnet is lighted up because that is the one that has the delegation. And here, I know, Daniel, you've played with the number of gateways, right? Anything
Correct.
you want to call out there?
Yeah, it's just the alt pause, which means the 30 minutes, right? If it is not in use, it's going to alt pause the instances. And you can set, I believe, up to 7 instance or
Yeah.
9 instance. Yeah.
Mm.
And yep. And another point is you can create multiple gateways, data gateways in the same VNet. Just you need new subnets, right? For example, if you want a dedicated gateway for prod, another dedicated gateway for dev, you can have different sizes. So from an architectural perspective, you have that flexibility. So and over here, you can set the number of instances.
Nice. Oh, I didn't realize you could do, so you do need a different
Yes.
subnet. Okay.
Yeah, you can create
Okay.
multiple subnets and create new VNet gateways for different purposes.
Nice. All right, so here we'll select our capacity. This is the active one. Yeah, and then hit save. Ready to go. Anything else here?
Looks good.
Okay. And while that is getting spun up, I quickly want to show you this private endpoint that I mentioned. So this SQL private endpoint I've already projected in the customer. I call this the customer's VNet. So coming back here, if you look at the SQL server here, you'll see that we have 2 private endpoints, one which is in the managed VNet, and this is the one in the customers VNet. So I already have that. So looks like this one is online, so it took a few minutes. Let's take a quick look at our database, see if it's still mirroring. So it's still mirroring. What should we do, Juan?
What we can do is we can delete this mirror database and connect to a new one. And as you can see here, no rows have been updated in our database, and it's been a couple of days since. So I'm wondering if, because we haven't added any new rows, we might not be seeing this reflected. But if we create a new database, we can double check that we will 100% need that VNet gateway to start mirroring it.
Perfect. So let's go to Workspaces, and then we can delete this mirror, right?
Exactly.
We'll make it fail, and then we will use the VNet data gateway is what you're suggesting.
Exactly.
Okay. So mirror SQL database. Mirror SQL database. We'll create a new connection. We'll do new connection and a no data gateway and authentication type. We want to use organizational.
Let's try it and let's see what it says about connecting without a gateway.
Yeah.
And something seems like it failed. Exactly, right? The error we
Yes.
wanted to see.
Yes. So in other words, it will not use the private endpoint, and we need to use the VNet data gateway because there's no public access right now. So no public access, and it will not use the private endpoint that we projected in the managed VNet. Right?
Exactly.
So what we could do is we'll start a new we'll do a new mirror using the VNet data gateway that we just created.
Precisely.
So I'll cancel out of this, and then we'll say new item, mirror SQL database. Cool. And then we'll say use the VNet data gateway. and organizational account and new connection.
You need to type the database name, Nehali.
Oh yeah, thank you. Oh, this gets me. Okay.
Sorry, you will need to sign in as well,
Sign
exactly.
in, okay. All right, good to go.
Perfect. And
That
that's
worked.
exactly the behavior we were expecting, right?
Mhm.
Bringing us back once more to that concept of for each different fabric item that we have, we'll need a different sort of tool to connect to any
Outbound.
source, exactly, to outbound connect to any source that is behind a private access.
All right, so looks like this error, I think it might, let's troubleshoot. I think one of the things we do on these sessions is if we see something, maybe we can troubleshoot this one. I thought we removed the mirroring, or maybe there is some leftover connections. Let's go see. No, it thinks that, oh, you know what? I ran into this before. Just remembered this. So here I'm going to pull off a database engineer thing. Okay. One, I think I
Sounds good.
ran into this before, and I had saved the query. So let me see if I can. Okay, so what happens is oh, because public network access is disabled, we can enable it for a second. I think what happens is there is some stale leftover information about the mirroring in this. See these two items, and we have to delete it. That's what I think after researching that error, I was able to find that. So if I do a new query, the same query, sorry.
So what we're saying is that Fabric is realizing there's another change feed, right, on the database, and it's using that to determine that this database is already being mirrored, as
Exactly.
opposed to looking at the warehouse, right?
Yes.
Interesting.
Yeah, so I was able to do that, and now if we run the same query, it's not there, and now it should work on the other side. Do you want to give it a go?
Let's try it.
Okay, so let me just go ahead and disable my networking, like kind of coming back to the same state. GitHub Copilot and ChatGPT and is scary because it converts me into a database architect.
Just adapting to what we need.
What's that? Yeah, exactly, right? So we'll just give it a few seconds for my SQL Server thing. Yeah. And you can see that it's using the VNET data gateway. Okay, no error. Should we select all? Oh no, it's still loading. Awesome, so that worked.
Perfect.
SQL DB VNet gateway or something like that. Too long, but it's kind of shows the message. Awesome. So that looks like it's working. So while we wait, I'm just kind of coming back to the envisioning part. We were able to use this connection from Fabric using the VNET data gateway to connect to this private endpoint in the customer's VNET. So we'll refresh this.
And as we saw in the public scenario, it might take a couple of minutes for this to load.
Yeah. So Juan, when I was learning just the networking bits for this, I was using, while we wait, I was using this Gen 2 workflow to actually see what the IPs looked like end to end. So if it's okay, I wanted to demo that, and just for our networking audience to see that when we do that, what does the source appear on this side? In other words, I have a Linux VM over here that's just, it's a basic web server running on port 5000. And when we do a simple Gen 2 workflow, it actually sees the source as the IP of the VNet data gateway. So that's what I wanted to demo for the purpose of the recording, if that's okay, while we wait.
That sounds great. I think it's very interesting to check out.
I can also give you another view, Nehali, how
Sure.
to get that same
Okay,
information that you're
let's
looking
do
for.
it. Oh, okay. So if you have an easier way, let's start there. So just to complete on this one's up and running. Yeah, tell me more, Daniel.
Yeah. So remember when we run the notebook over the managed, you run that NS lookup and you got the managed private endpoint, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Technically, over the VNet data gateway, you can do not something similar, but you can get the same visibility. If you go back to the Fabric portal in that data gateway, when we add the data gateway, that screen. So select virtual. So if you pick the virtual, select virtual network, go to the three dots. Yep. And you see there is a troubleshoot network there.
Nice.
So what you can do here, you can get the visibility of what that instance is getting from that subnet, right? So you see, for example, which DNS is using, which is the Azure provided DNS, that's Magic 168 IP, right? That IP, the second IP address is actually the instance IP, 172.16.254, the default gateway, right? And you can, another thing you can do, Nehali, if you remember, you have the SQL FQDN, and if you put the SQL FQDN and you do 1433, you can test the connectivity and get the resolution there too.
Perfect. I'm loving it already. Let's do it. All right, so let's do that. So if I go to properties and grab this. Yeah, because one of the things that I wanted to show, and Juan, we talked about this, is that it's actually resolving it by the virtue of that the private DNS zone. So, this is a good troubleshooting technique. Hopefully it resolves it to the private. See, this is the private IP of.
Yep, that's the private IP associated with the private endpoint exposed to the VNet. You can double check there. And and you got the connectivity test below successful.
Awesome. I love it. I think that actually does everything that I wanted to show using. I had a roundabout way of doing it, but if you still want, we can have that going, because the thing that is important here is, like Daniel proved in that troubleshooting, is that behind the scene there is a DNS zone that is linked to this VNet. Private link.database.windows.net, and that 251.17 IP that we saw is because of this VNet linking. So if any of those bits are not in place, that troubleshoot would have failed. Okay. So that's that. So if you want, we could do a quick Gen 2 workflow where you could also see what it's doing behind the scene. So thank you, Daniel, for that little troubleshooting demo. So here I have that Linux VM. I'll just show the customers that CS, there's that JSON file there. And then just for the completeness of the recording, I'm in the same VNet as where the data gateway is, and we'll just run this Python server. And if we do a Gen 2 workflow here, all right, so let's create a Gen 2 data flow. We'll call this data. I think I have to make it use, there's got to be a way to use, yeah, there it is. So here we will send, so it's HTTP. So we are going to make sure that we use this Power Platform gateway. It may have had some stale information from before, but we'll use the Power Platform gateway, organizational account. Okay, and then sign in. So we'll just do anonymous here, right? Because we're just hitting this, we'll do anonymous because we're hitting this JSON directly. So let's go see what happens. So the important bits over here is that we are using the VNet gateway. And here it should get reflected that we are coming from 250.4, which was the same IP that Daniel showed us here, 250.4, which is the IP address of that data gateway.
Great demo, Nehali.
Thank you. Yeah, it's very simple, but if you are helping, your Fabric customers, you can also do that same NS lookup from here to make sure that the FQDN also resolves from here because it's in the same VNet. Yeah, lots of tricks. I loved the troubleshooting. Anything else before we move to our next on-prem data gateway demo?
I think we're all good.
Perfect. So just making sure, just looking through my layers here. So we did the SQL mirroring. We made sure no inbound. We made sure there was a private DNS zone. Okay, so all the layers are complete and we are ready to go to our on-prem VNet data gateway. All right, so now we are ready for our on-prem data gateway. And notice that the way the on-prem data gateway gets deployed, it's essentially, it is a little installer that we will deploy on a Windows VM. And that's what, so this icon over here is showing the VNet data gateway. This, as I mentioned before, is a site-to-site or a express route connected branch, so an on-prem site. And typically you would have the data gateway here, but for the purpose of our demo, we will be using the on-prem data gateway on a VM that is in Azure. And then we will demo the copy activity that will go from something in Azure all the way to the Lakehouse. Anything you want to call out, Juan, about how we are setting up this use case, what you see in the field?
Yes, in many cases, there are sources that don't allow you to use the VNet gateway, right? Some examples I can think of right now are Oracle DBs on a VM, right? So in that case, I see the customers using the on-premise data gateway within that VM to be able to connect to that Oracle source. Additionally, if you are thinking of any scenario that is not in the cloud, right? If you need to access a service that is actually on premises, that definitely needs that on-premise data gateway, right? But that doesn't mean that the on-premise data gateway is limited to only on-premises source, right? There are certain cloud sources that also need it, as opposed to the VNet gateway.
Perfect. Awesome. All right. So what we'll do is we'll jump on this VM. I already have downloaded the installer, but we'll show you how to install it. Is that the first logical step? Keep me honest here, Juan.
Yes,
Or
definitely.
should we do the copy activity after, right? Okay.
Yes, we'll start with installing the on-premise data gateway.
Okay. So let me know if you guys can see my other screen.
We can see it.
Okay. So I am on one of the VMs that I showed you here. So if we do, we'll just to kind of do a sanity check. I am in the 172.16.1.7 VM, and I can also resolve my FQDN. It's not relevant here, but just wanted to show where I am. And here, this is the link. We'll put all of these links in the description below, but there is a download standard gateway link here, and I've already pre-downloaded it in the interest of time. So we'll go ahead and hit double click on that one. And we'll say I accept and install. This may take a few minutes. So looks like that did finish. So let's go ahead and put the email address. Now, first time I did it, I did have a little bit of I wasn't quite sure what email to put, but that has access to the Fabric Workspace, not global admin, but access to the Fabric Workspace. Okay, so let me grab the username that has access to Fabric, and then we'll put that in here and sign in. So Juan, we paused the video over here, and I spent some time troubleshooting that network error, and I realized that I had this leftover some private DNS zones configured from my previous lab. So I went ahead and I deleted that. Okay, and so what happened was, because of this VNets, because of these private DNS zones were linked to my VNet. If you see over here, when I did an NS lookup of app.fabric.microsoft.com, it wasn't resolving. It had the CNAME, but it didn't get the IP. So I deleted those, and now I think we are good. We can resolve properly, so we should give it a go again. Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
Perfect. So again, just a reminder that this is a username that has access to my Fabric workspace and to Fabric. And in the sign in option, we'll use my default browser, right? And sign in.
Mm-hmm.
Let's sign in. Okay, so authentication is complete. Looking better. So here we are, and register the new gateway on this computer. Next. So we'll give this a name. I usually give it the name of the VM where we are running the so Win Management VM. So gateway. And here, I don't think the recovery key is needed, right?
You have to create one, but we won't need to use it.
Okay, so configure. And while we're waiting, I'll get the other side ready. So here we will expect to see this under. So here we will expect to see this under Manage Connections, and over here, once it's complete, on-premises gateway. So looks like is online and ready. So far, so good. Okay. And so let's go ahead and try to refresh it one more time over here. There we go. There we have. Okay. And we have our gateway online. Should have called it the right way, should have been on-prem data gateway. Let's rename this just to be.
Realize.
Yeah, I was trying to rename it properly, but let's call this on-prem. I think it should allow us to do that. So it's the on-prem versus the VNET data gateway, which is in the Azure VNET, and this one is on that VM. So now we are ready to set up our, kind of going back to the drawing board. So with the on-prem data gateway, the use case that we want to share is the copy activity. So the way the flows would work is, and remember, just for the completeness, that the on-prem data gateway is installed on a VM in Azure, just to simulate that, but in the real world, it will be installed on a VM or a server on-prem. So the flows that we want to share, the use case that we want to share is, and maybe Juan, you can talk a little bit about how this use case matches what we see in the real world as well.
So for this use case of the on-premise data gateway with the copy activity, if we look back at when we had our file in ADLS Gen 2, we had this file accessible publicly, right? But in our situation right now, it's no longer accessible publicly. It's in some server. It could be on the cloud, on premises, as Nehali mentioned, right? But there's no way for us to get to this file. So we are going to be using the on-premise data gateway. And the on-premise data gateway is basically talking to Azure Relay to be able to send this information and provide access to this data through Azure Relay onto Fabric. So in the field, I've seen some situations, for example, with Oracle DB, even hosted on the cloud, of using an on-premise data gateway to facilitate this connectivity between Fabric and that database.
Very interesting. Yeah, so even though the VNET gateway is available, the use case for Oracle is using on-prem data gateway.
Exactly.
Good point. Yeah, and just wanted to call out that in the earlier recording, you may see Azure Service Bus, but the right thing to put here is the Azure Relay. So with that, should we go ahead and do a demo then?
Let's do it.
Okay, all right. So here we are in the public workspace. Should we create a new item?
And we'll do a new copy job.
And we'll call it copy job using VNET on-prem VNET data gateway. And here we'll choose the folder, right?
Exactly. And as you can see in the folder, you get a first red message in the middle that says that you need an on-premise data gateway. There's no way for us to access a folder without using the on-premise data gateway. So there are a couple of sources that have this requirement.
Yeah, this is a great call out. If I drop this one down, I'll only see the on-premises gateway,
Exactly.
correct? I
Correct.
see. Okay, so we'll use this one, and let me go to that VM here. And we do have in the documents folder a simple CSV file. Okay, so that's our CSV file, and we'll grab this. We'll grab the folder location and paste it here, right? We can create a new connection, or we could use an existing connection.
We could create a new one.
Yeah, let's do the new one. So this is the one, and then we'll just do. All right, so that one worked.
Perfect.
And
And you can see here our customers.csv file.
Very nice. And we want to check this one, right?
So we copy the file and not a table.
And was there anything we had to do for the preview to work?
Yes, for the preview to work, you would need to turn on the schema so that it's able to preview a table instead of a file.
And that comes later, right?
Exactly. Once we are loading our file, it will ask us like our lakehouse, right? That we can put it in.
So we can just pick this one.
Exactly. And here we can just choose a full copy. That's fine. Here is where we have to give it a name to the file. So let's make sure we add the extension as well, the .csv.
I see. So we'll call it customer. So it's on this side. Oh, so, okay. So this is important for it to preview, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
And let's just let our copy activity complete now.
Is there a way to see the progress here, or it only happens?
Until it starts, we won't be able to see progress, but now
I see.
This window will tell you more in detail, but because it's just one file, you'll see it complete very quick. Let's wait until it says in progress instead of queued. In progress, there you go.
Okay.
All right, so now that we are in progress, it took a little bit to start up. We can click on the green text and it succeeds right away. But if you click on the green text, it will give you a bit more details in terms of what it did.
Perfect. Wow, this was a good demo. Should we just double check on the Lakehouse side just to see what it looks like? So if we go in the Lakehouse public,
To click on the folder itself.
okay,
And there
yes,
you go, customers.csv. And now
very
because
nice.
we added the extension, we can see a nice preview of it.
Awesome. So these two are the links, the shortcut that we created, right? Okay, that's where I was missing it.
Exactly.
Okay, awesome. That was a very good demo. Thanks, Juan.
Of course.
End to end over the VNET data gateway, and the CSV file was on this VM. Awesome. And one more thing I wanted to show Juan, just for the completeness of the recording, and something that I had labbed before, but I want to share with the audience, is with a simple Gen 2 workflow, we can demonstrate that when we have a flow that's initiated from Fabric, hitting this VM, Linux VM with that same Python web server, we will see that the source IP will be the IP address of the on-prem data gateway. Okay, so that's something
Perfect.
I wanted to demo, because these two are in the same subnet, which in your on-prem scenario, you know, your SQL server, for example, would be has to be in the same network as your on-prem data gateway. Okay, so that's something I wanted to demo. So let's go ahead and create a quick Gen 2 data flow. So we'll go to this one, and we'll go to the workspaces, public workspaces, new item. We'll call this via on-prem data gateway, just to kind of show the use case. And what we'll do is I always forget which icon is for the source, but we could use this link, right? And here, I believe I chose, let me just, I believe I chose this one. This is the web API, and we can grab this put this here, and we can choose we'll create a new connection here. So this time, so before we went over the VNET gateway, so this time we will go over the on-premises data gateway. Okay, so that's the difference that I wanted to show. And I think that everything else should be good. We are hitting this, and I do have, let's just make sure we'll clear this out. So here, what we expect to see is when we create the connection and we hit this URL, we'll see the source IP as the IP address of the on-prem data gateway. So that's the test I wanted to demo. And while we are doing that, I want to just go here and show you so we'll clear this. We'll show the IP config on the data gateway. It's 1.7. That's where the VNET on-prem VNET data gateway is running. So we'll we'll see that IP address show up. So okay, so this completed, and if I jump on the Linux VM, that's the 1.7 that I wanted to show. Make sense?
Perfectly.
Okay, so back to the drawing board. In this diagram, back when I had the data gateway, I had 7. So now it is, I had 6, but now it's 7. So I can just update my diagram here to show this snippet. So with the Azure on-prem data gateway, there are certain limitations that we would like to bring to your attention. So we'll share all of these links below. And then there are also lots of different ports that are required, outbound ports that are required. So with that, what we will do is let's go to the gateway itself. And Daniel, do you want to go talk a little bit about, if something isn't working? There are some good troubleshooting tips here.
Yeah. Yes, Nehali. Yeah. In this on-premise data gateway interface, we have the diagnostics where you can do some networking tests to ensure all the required ports are open. And if you check in this screen, there is a network port test at the bottom, and you can start a new test. And when you run that test, it's going to generate a log file, which I believe Nehali has
I already ran the
run.
test.
And that is the expected, right? We do have the FQDNs, and which we need to resolve. So the on-premise data gateway is based on an Azure Relay, which ties to SaaS Bus, and you see most of the URL FQDNs are SaaS Bus related, and obviously we test the connectivity to them, resolution and connectivity.
Awesome. Yeah, so this is a good tool.
Yep. It's a good tool. And if you go back there, Nehali, it's important, another point, because that communication is usually 443. You see most of the ports that are open is 443. But customers also, they can instance that to proxies, right? During the setup of the, if you recall, there was an option to instance a proxy. So even if you don't have direct access through the SaaS Bus, and if you have a proxies inside you can instance that during the installation process of the on-premise data gateway.
Makes sense. Yeah. And all of these, again, is documented. All of the ports that are required outbound are documented over here. And anything else, Juan? Do you have anything on this document?
Nothing else from my side. I think this was a great explanation.
Okay, so with that, we'll go into more details about this when we do private networking. But I do want to call out a few limitations. So when we enable PLS at the workspace level and at the tenant level, there are certain considerations that are clearly called out in our documentation. And I think Daniel or Juan, if one of you want to talk a little bit about this one.
Yeah, I can talk a little bit more about it. So usually the on-premise data gateway is applicable more for where you have an instance present in on-premises. Technically, you can also install in a VM in Azure and connect back to on-premises. But just keep in mind that or supportability for on-premise data gateway is always through public internet endpoints, as we showed you earlier over the test connectivity. And if you want to do any type of interactions with the private link or recommended solution as stated in this in the documentations. The virtual network data gateway, VNET data gateway is the recommended approach for that.
Perfect. Yeah, and it's also documented here that on-premises data gateways aren't supported when you use private link. But later in the private link section of the video, we will show you that when we enabled tenant level private link service, we were still allowing inbound, right? And in our labs, we'll show you that it does work, but it's not supported here through our documentation. So just be aware of that.